I have a question. My friend asked me this the other day, and it had me thinking, what is actually skill set wise the big difference between Trey Murphy and Brandon Miller right now?
Trey Murphy's better.
Just
Yeah,
like
I'd
skill
say
set
More
or
yeah, Trey
polished.
Murphy's definitely better.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
also I think Trey Murphy's a much better athlete than Brandon Miller and deals with physicality a lot better. That's one of my biggest gripes with Brandon Miller is that dude.
Mhm.
He's not necessarily scared to go to the rim, but he's scared to touch anybody when he's going to the rim. And it's like, dog, you're 6'10". He's not 6 foot. He's 6'9", 6'10", and you move like prime Paul George. Like, please get a little bit stronger and
Mhm.
just a little bit better at finishing because he's an awful finisher. But yeah, I agree. Trey Murphy's definitely better and probably. I think if Brandon Miller becomes what Trey Murphy is now, that's a home run for Brandon. I think Brandon Miller should be totally pleased with that, and the Hornets should
Mhm.
be totally pleased with that.
Yeah, I think for me it's the fluid shooting. I think Trey Murphy's a much better fluid shooter, just in terms of his rhythm, how he gets it off, the form. Like it just looks. Oh my God, Trey Murphy has probably one of the best forms in the league. But the way he can get to it is so fast. Like catch and shoot, he's already in his motion. Even when he take off the pull up, he's in his motion. I think with Brandon Miller, everything kind of looks practice. I think if that sounds right. With Trey, it looks natural. Like everything looks natural right now. And Brandon, he's young. I don't think he's that much younger than Trey Murphy though. If I'm not mistaken, maybe
Few
I
years
could be
younger.
lying. Yeah,
Trey Murphy's 24. Brandon Miller
should be like 21,
is
22.
22.
Yeah, because Brandon Miller came in the NBA
22.
like turning 21. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, they're not all far off in ages. And Trey Murphy, it's funny because Trey Murphy came out. He was just supposed to be a 3-and-D guy, and
Mhm.
now he's completely like upped his game. Brandon Miller was supposed to be that guy. Yeah, it's just tough to kind of like get better in Charlotte.
Would you take Trey Murphy over Brandon Miller if you're building a team for 5, 10 years?
Yeah, you take a more sure thing. I think Brandon Miller, you could say that his ceiling's higher. I'm not necessarily sure. I'm not smart enough of a prospect guy to agree or disagree with that, but I think what Trey Murphy has proven already makes him a bit more valuable from a team building perspective just because of there's less unknown. There's much less unknown.
Yeah, that's a tough question because like when are you asking me? Because when they both came out, I remember Trey Murphy coming out, didn't have playmaking chops. The ball handling was suspect. Was just a really really good shooter while being a really pesky defender. Long arms. Good wingspan. With Brandon Miller, you saw a lot of that at Alabama. You saw the fact that he was able to take over games. He had the ball in his hands. But now we're like 2 years removed and you're getting a completely different transcended Trey Murphy, and is that because of situation or, teams, people getting hurt for sure. But with B Miller, you haven't seen, and it's unfortunate because there's also injuries that's hampered him and the situation in Charlotte, but you haven't seen that same progression as you've seen from Trey Murphy, which Trey Murphy has been here a little longer. So I'd probably take Trey. I'd probably take Trey. Yeah, and especially with now that I'm 100% sure the age gap isn't crazy. I thought I was capping, but it's actually like they're only like 2 years apart.
Mhm.
Yeah, give me Trey Murphy.
I would take Brandon Miller long term. The way that he closed his rookie season, averaging an efficient 20 points per game from 3-point land last year, I believe put him on a fast track to be the clearly better player. But there's a little bit of fog of war here because Brandon Miller has only played 27 games this year, and that small sample is easy to look at. It's the most recent thing we've seen, but I'm still really optimistic. Miller has some questions. I mean, like you said, Alex, I mean, it's a contact sport. You got to be a lot more dynamic. It's the same issue I have with Zachary Ricochet, we'll talk about in a few minutes, where he has some issues that he's going to have to iron out. But given the upside, given what we already saw from him as a rookie, I'm still going to go with Brandon Miller.
I would still go Miller too. It's hard because with the way Murphy's, transcendent. Now, granted, it is an awful team he was able to create on. And I kind of
Mhm.
wonder how many players in the NBA could average 21 points per game, playing on the New Orleans Pelicans volume in that context. But I agree with the Trey Murphy ascension. For me, I just think I'm curious to see how Brandon Miller looks after a full off season in which he can probably just focus on his body. How much muscle does he bring back? Because I always thought as a prospect, while he was a thin guy, I always thought he had the potential to just build on his frame, and also talking to some scouts, they're always like, yeah, he's got the shoulders. He can grow into a bigger body, and that can make a big difference from him. And also his middle game, like Trey Murphy off the dribble is really improved. I think Brandon Miller's middle game is far ahead of Trey Murphy's. And I mean, he has that nasty floater he can get to, he can pull up. Now, if he's just a more finished or efficient rim attacker, he's one of those dudes I think can explode, but he needs to be healthy.